All right. Aloha. My name is Robin. I'm the Education Manager at Pacific Whale Foundation. Thanks so much for joining me this morning for another live virtual classroom. As always, there will be a couple fun activities that you can participate in with me at home today. Normally, I put up a materials list right when we get started to make sure you have everything you need to participate. I'm going to skip that and just quickly go over that today because we don't really need very much. For our underwater observations, all we need is our observation skills. So just our eyes and nothing else. And then when we get into our creative activity later on, all you'll need is some paper and whatever it is that you like to draw with. So crayons, markers, colored pencils, paint if you prefer. So I'll remind you again about that later and give you an opportunity to get that if you need. So let's go ahead and dive in. And before I forget, I'll mention we do have the live chat here. So at any time, if you have any questions, you can always put them in there. And I'm hoping that this will be interactive when we get to our underwater observations. So I'm hoping that you'll be making some observations with me in the chat there today. I'm really excited about today because I get to virtually, of course, take you snorkeling with me. Now, we're all going to stay dry today, myself included. I've gone ahead and done the snorkeling in advance, and I've prepared some video that I'm going to share with you today. So it'll be like you're snorkeling with me. But before we can dive right into those videos, it's important that we have an idea of what it is we're observing. What are we looking for, and why is it important? So what I'll be showing you today, like I said, I'll be taking you virtually snorkeling with me. So I'll be showing you some video from the coral reefs around the coastline of the island of Maui. Now we only have so much time together, so I wish that we could cover anything and everything that's found on a coral reef, but we are going to have to keep it pretty simple. Coral reefs are ecosystems that are very biodiverse, so that means they have lots and lots of different kinds of life, lots of different plants and animals. And so as much as I'd love to touch on all of them, I'm going to focus on something that we all kind of get attracted to first when we're snorkeling, or something that we see a lot of when we're snorkeling, and that's fish. And even I'd love to be able to tell you about all of the fish and everything about them, but we're going to try to keep it pretty simple today. And my hope is that this will spark some more curiosity for you, and that you'll try to learn some more on your own, or maybe keep in touch with me and ask some questions after today. So since I'm going to be taking you virtually snorkeling, a nice background to have when you're snorkeling is to know what types of fish you might see, or a little bit about how to identify them. So that's what our focus is going to be today. So fish are classified in groups called families. And although there are lots of different species of fish within a family that all look different, they share some common characteristics. And so you can think of our families the same way. So each of us looks different, unless you have an identical twin. No one else in your family looks just like you. But usually there are some characteristics that you share with other members of your family. So we're going to learn about some of those fish families today, just a few at a time, and some of the characteristics that will help us tell that it's a fish that belongs to that family. So things that we can see so what they look like and how they move. And then we'll get to those videos. So I'm going to start with some pictures. And again, I'm just going to stick to a few families at a time. So then when we get to those videos, we only have a few families to choose from at one time. And these are ones that we pretty commonly see when we're snorkeling here. So the first picture I'm going to show you is the butterfly fish family. So remember, this is one species. This is one kind of butterfly fish. But there are some characteristics that they all share that we can point out and we'll be able to recognize. So one of those is the body shape. So if you take a look at the body here, it's kind of a round or a disc shape. And the butterfly fish tend to be brightly colored, and usually, or pretty often, this color combination that we see here. So yellow, black, and white. And one thing that the butterfly fish also do as a way to protect themselves, they try to confuse their predators by camouflaging or hiding their eye. So if you see the orange arrow there, it's pointing to a dark band that's actually covering the fish's eye. So I think if you look closely, you'll still be able to see it. And then they go a step further. They don't just cover up or disguise their eye, but they actually have a fake eye or a false eye spot at the back of their body. So the blue arrow is pointing to the false eye spot on this type of butterfly fish. So this helps them confuse their predators. So they don't know which end is which, or they might think the back end is the front end, and it makes it a little easier for them to get away. So those are some of the common characteristics that all of the butterfly fish share. Their body shape, the coloration for the most part, and camouflaging or hiding their eye. Now the next family I'm going to show you, there's actually two subfamilies in this family. So the first one I'm showing you right now is a surgeon fish, and the unicorn fish are also in the same family. So they have a lot of their characteristics in common, and there's one thing I'm going to point out that's different between them. So if we start with the body shape, it's more of an oval shape, and that goes for both the surgeon fish and the unicorn fish. And I've used my white arrow to point out the eye. The surgeon fish and the unicorn fish have eyes that are particularly high up on their heads or on their bodies. So that's one thing. If we get a good look at that placement, that might help us determine what kind of fish we're looking at or combination of these characteristics. The surgeon fish and the unicorn fish also move their bodies or propel themselves using their pectoral fins, which are the fins on the sides of their bodies. And that's what the blue arrow is pointing to right now. Now, what's different between the surgeon fish and the unicorn fish is what's found near the base of their tail. And so the pink or the magenta arrow is pointing to one spine at the base of the tail on this surgeon fish. And there's another spine just like it on the other side of the body. And these spines are actually retractable. So what that means is it can lie flat actually inside of a groove on the body, and it can be flipped out when the fish wants to use that as a defense. And that spine is sharp like a surgeon's scalpel, and that's where that name comes from. So while the unicorn fish have the same body shape and also their eye placed high and use their pectoral fins to swim, their spines at their tail are a little bit different. So what they have is what those blue arrows are pointing to. And they actually have bony projections that are also razor sharp, but they're not retractable. They're always sticking out. And a unicorn fish has two of those on each side. So a little bit different, but they both have those sharp spines near their tails. And one more family before we go to some video are the triggerfish. And the triggerfish, you can see several of them in this picture here. Their body shape, I like to describe as a little bit more of a diamond shape. So not too different than the surgeon fish, but I like to think a little bit more diamond shape than oval. And they get their name triggerfish, actually for this unique arrangement of spines that they have on the top of their bodies. And the yellowish or macaroni and cheese colored arrow is pointing at that on the fish on the bottom of your screen right now. So there are two spines there, and there's one that's thick and strong, the front one, and that's what you see kind of popping up right now. And there's a smaller spine behind it that can actually lock it into place like a trigger mechanism. And triggerfish actually use this to help stay put. So if they wanted to hide from a predator and they went into a small cave or crevice, by locking up those spines, they can stay in place and they can't be pulled out. So that's where their name comes from. And they move themselves using those large fins that you see on the top and bottom of the back of their body. That's what the white arrows are pointing to. So those are called dorsal and anal fins, the dorsal fin being on the top of the body and the anal fin being on the lower part of the body. So they can actually ripple those when they move. And this allows them to maneuver really easily. They can move in small spaces, and they can move both forwards and backwards. So those are the few families that I want to get started with. Now is the challenge. I'm going to take you virtually snorkeling with me, but we're not going to see the fish like we did in the photos. When we're snorkeling, the fish are moving. They're not staying still for us. They're not giving that perfect angle. So I did my best to choose videos where I think you'll be able to identify the families, but keep in mind this is a challenge, right? We're watching wild animals in their own environment doing what they're doing, and just trying to observe that. Now also, I showed you one example of a fish in each family. That doesn't mean that the fish that you see in the video is going to be exactly the same as that example. So it'll still have those same characteristics that we talked about, but it will be a different species. So I'm going to go ahead and start those videos. Bear with me, there seems to be a little bit of a lag for them getting started playing. But as soon as you think you know which family you're looking at, and I'll review them one more time before I start the videos, you can type the name in the chat. Send me what you think it is as soon as you're seeing it. I'm going to make sure that I'm patient because I know there is a little delay between what I'm saying and what you're seeing. So to review, our choices of families are butterfly fish, surgeon fish, unicorn fish, and triggerfish. So I'm going to start with my first video and give it a second to catch up and start playing. And then as soon as you think you know what family you're looking at, you can go ahead and type that in the chat. And for bonus points, of course, not that there really are any points today, but if you know which species, which type of fish in that family it is, you can tell us that too in the chat if you want to. So remember to take note of the body shape, the coloration, the way that they're moving, any other of those characteristics that we talked about for the different fish families. Yes, I see my first response. Thank you, Sue. And you are correct. We're looking at butterfly fish here. So the coloration, I think, is a really good giveaway for me, that yellow, black, and white coloration. You can also see that the eye is camouflaged with that dark band and a nice dark spot elsewhere on the body. So I'm going to switch to another video now. And same thing here. It might take a second to start playing. And then as soon as you think you know what family of fish this is you're looking at, you can go ahead and type your response in the chat. So again, pay attention to the body shape and how it's moving. Yes, I see lots of responses coming in for the last one. Thank you guys, and don't get discouraged about the delay, and I'll try to wait a little bit longer next time, but you were all correct. That first video we saw was a butterfly fish, and so now we've got our second video playing, and as soon as you think you know what you're seeing here, go ahead and share that as well. And don't worry about being copycats. Somebody could be wrong, or we all have the same thoughts. And I think we all might have some sort of delay here. So please don't get discouraged and keep those responses coming. I see a correct one there for a teardrop butterfly fish. That first video, that is correct. Excellent job. And now, oh yes, okay, I see it. Our first one here for the second video. I see some more coming in. This is a triggerfish. You are correct. So the easiest thing for me to tell when I look at this video, because this fish is moving all over the place, are those fins on the top and bottom near the tail, those big fins rippling. That's characteristic of a triggerfish. And at times, I actually see those trigger spines also engaged or sticking up off of the body. Excellent job. So I have one more I want to show you for these families. And yes, everybody, I see those answers coming in. Triggerfish, you are correct. So I'm going to swap videos now. And this is probably the advanced level for this round because we're going to see so much of the fish and it's going to move quite quickly. But if you think about some of those unique characteristics we talked about of some of the different families, I think you're going to be able to tell what this is. So just give the video a second to start playing, although as it's frozen, you might actually get better clues about what you're seeing. So a little bit tricky here. There's one distinguishing characteristic that's particularly easy to spot in here. So I'm going to make sure I'm patient for this one and give you a chance to share your answer. But I would say this is definitely the advanced level. Yes, Sue, you got it. It's a unicorn fish. And something that I didn't mention when I showed you guys the picture, and you might be wondering, unicorn, you would expect to be named as such because it would have a spine on its head like a unicorn. Now, some unicorn fish do have that, but as you might have been able to tell from the picture I showed you, that particular unicorn fish did not have a spine on its head, so not all of them do. But those bony projections by their tails are what make them unicorn fish. Yes, I see more answers coming in. Thank you guys so much for helping to identify those fish. You did an excellent job. And I have to admit, not that I was trying to trick you by any means, but I did try to make it a little bit difficult. So I grouped those families together on purpose because their body shapes are pretty similar. And so you were able to distinguish the difference between them by some of those other characteristics. So that was really great. Excellent job. So I have another group of families that I want to try out with you guys and see how we do with those. And I did also group them together by similarities in body shape. So we'll talk about that and we'll see that, but we'll also have to focus on some of their other characteristics. So we'll go back to just still pictures that are pretty easy to look at for now. So the next family that I want to share with you is the goatfish family. And I actually have two different pictures that I'll show you for the goatfish. And the reason for that is that you might be wondering why they're called goatfish, and this picture isn't really going to give you the best idea, but this does give you a good idea of their body shape. So you can see they've got a longer, more slender body shape than the previous families we looked at. If you look at the blue arrow there pointing towards the tail, they've got a forked tail. And those orange arrows on the top of the body, these fish have two dorsal fins, so two different fins on their back, and they may be a little bit tricky to see in this image. It's camouflaging quite well with the background. I'm going to show you the second goatfish picture. Now it's facing the other direction. I've again used arrows to point out that forked tail and the two dorsal fins, and you can still see that long, slender body, but something new that we're pointing out. So that bright kind of greenish, yellowish arrow at the front, what that's pointing to are the barbels by the goatfish's chin, so kind of like a goat's beard, and that's where the name goatfish comes from. And they use those barbels to actually sift or taste through the sand to find their food. So that's a little clue about goatfish, is that they might often be near or at the bottom because that's where the food that they're looking for is. So the next family I want to show you all are the wrasses. And there are actually two different examples of wrasses in this picture here. And you can see they all have that long, slender body shape as well. But there's a lot of variety in the wrasses. They come in all different shapes and sizes. And just the two here shows you that pretty well. But they all really do have bright coloration. So you can see lots of different colors here just in these two examples. And I've got my blue arrows that are pointing to the pectoral fins on the wrasse on the left. And so they also use their pectoral fins to propel themselves to move. And you may or may not be able to see this from the angle we're looking, but the wrasses have one big continuous dorsal fin, so one big fin that goes across their entire back. So those are things that we'll keep an eye out for when we watch our videos, so remember those. And one more thing I want to mention about the wrasses is at their mouth or their face. Now we can't exactly see the faces of these right now, but we can kind of see the way their mouths narrow. And the wrasses have sharp teeth that project forward, and you can actually sometimes see them if you're looking at the front of the fish. So something to keep in mind about them. And finally, the parrotfish family. So again, also a long body, and you can see the white arrows again pointing to the pectoral fins. So parrotfish also use their pectoral fins to propel themselves. And they also have a large dorsal fin, kind of continuous along their body on their backs. And in this case, you see bright coloration, but not all of them have that bright coloration. That'll vary a little bit more in the parrotfish. Some of them are a little less bright, more red and gray and brown colors. And most importantly, where the name comes from of a parrotfish. where that purple arrow is pointing towards their mouth. They have what looks like a beak, what looks like a parrot's beak. So their teeth are actually fused into these dental plates that look like a beak there. So I'll pop back in real quick before we go to our videos. So just like before, I'll review those families that we just learned about, and then I'll switch to some of the videos. And just like you've been doing before, you guys have been doing a great job. As soon as you think you know what family it is or what species of fish even it is, you can go ahead and put that in the chat there. So the 3 families that our choices are this time around are the goatfish. I'll show you the second picture of the goatfish, the wrasses, and the parrotfish. And again, it might not be the exact same one that you saw in the picture, but it'll still have the characteristics of that family. So I'm going to go ahead and play our first video now. And again, just bear with me while it catches up and starts playing. And remember to focus on, we know that these all have pretty similar body shapes. I gave that away. So the fins that they're using to move or how they're moving, their coloration, their faces, if you can see that. And of course, you have to be patient too. These fish move around a lot, so you have to wait till you get that angle that might be helpful for you. So this is just like if you were out there snorkeling with me. You have to wait for the fish to give you that right angle where you can identify it, where you can figure out what it is. Yes, I start to see some correct answers coming in, so keep them coming. You want to guess what this is. But you are correct, this is a parrotfish. So this was tricky. The coloration is quite a bit different than the picture that I showed you, but you can see that beak when it turns around and it's eating. You can absolutely see that beak, and you can see that it's swimming using its pectoral fins as well. And actually there are some little appearances of some other fish families in there too, but yes, this was a video of the parrotfish. So now I'm going to switch to another video, and I have a feeling you guys are going to get this one pretty quickly because it is the same kind as the picture that I showed you. So not just the same family, but it's the same species that I showed you in the picture, and it happens to be doing something that we talked about when I showed you this family. So I know those were a lot of clues, but I have a feeling you guys are going to get this one right away. Even though it's a little tricky to see this fish, it camouflages very well with its environment, and we notice it's pretty close to the bottom right now. So as soon as you know what family that is, please let me know. And this was actually some lucky footage, so these fish may not be doing this all the time, but I happened to be able to catch some footage while it was doing this. Yes, there we go. Excellent job. This is a goatfish, and so this is one of those rare opportunities where you actually get to see them using those barbels to taste for food in the sand. Very good. So I think you guys are definitely up for this challenge. This last video that I want to share with you, I would say, is the advanced level. Now, when it gets started, you're going to see a lot of families, and you'll probably recognize all of them, but as you continue to watch the video, I think you'll see which fish I want to focus on in this one. Now, it does move pretty quickly, and it doesn't always give us a great view. So think really carefully about some of the characteristics that we've talked about in these fish. Their faces, their fins, their coloration, how they move. And just give it a second. There we go. So when you can see which fish it is that I'm actually paying attention to here in the video. And it's not always clear. It sometimes happens when we're snorkeling too. So this is definitely an advanced level of fish ID or fish family ID here. It does have some bright coloration, which makes it easy to keep track of, particularly the bright yellow on its tail. Yes, excellent job. I see some more responses coming in. So you're correct, and maybe you used process of elimination. Maybe you were able to tell. This is a wrasse, So again, they're usually very bright in color, and that can range all over the place. What we're looking at is called a yellow-tailed chorus here right now. So excellent job with your identification of the fish families. And I see some other comments here too. There were lots of different types of fish in there as well. And so you're able to identify those now. So I know we weren't able to get super in depth about all of the different kinds of fish and their lives, why they're important on the reef, what they eat, even things like that. But this is a great starting off point, particularly for snorkeling, or in our case, virtual snorkeling, because we're at least able to recognize what it is we're looking at. And so I hope, like I said earlier, that this sparked some interest in you, and maybe you'll want to take some time to learn a little bit more about some of these reef fish, their place in the ecosystem on the coral reef, and why they're so important. So now we're going to get to the fun and the creative part of our time together today. And this is when you're going to need your paper and whatever it is that you want to use to color. And so I'm going to start to move our view here, make myself a little smaller so you can see my workspace. And so I've got my paper here, and I'll make sure that my camera's in focus. And I've got my colored pencils also. So I'm ready to get started. So hopefully you're ready to get started too. And this is something that you can do with me right now. You can also continue to do on your own so long after we conclude our time together. But I'd like us to take some of those unique characteristics that we learned about today and incorporate them into our own unique fish. And so I like to do this. I like to think a little bit about the identity of my fish. What kind of fish do I want to make? So where does it live? What does it eat? How does it get around? Does it want to camouflage? Or does it want to be really bright? Does it have spines, maybe like the surgeonfish, and so it wants to warn predators that it shouldn't eat them? So that's up to you. You can do whatever you like, but I encourage you to give some thought to some of those things that we saw and that we talked about today and put those into your drawing. So the first thing that I'm going to do to get started, I'm going to take one of my colored pencils. I think I have purple here. And I'm going to choose a body shape for my fish, and I'm going to draw that outline for the body shape. And so we saw, remember today, we saw diamond-shaped fish, we saw oval-shaped fish, round fish, long skinny fish. I want to try to make mine maybe a rounded triangle. I want to try a new shape. And I'm going to leave some openings in my outline so that I can add the mouth and I can add the tail later. So I'm going to make a triangle. Hopefully I'm pressing hard enough that you can see mine, but remember, you don't have to make yours just like mine. You can make yours however you want. Excuse me. So any shape that you want. And I left openings for the mouth and I left openings for the tail. And actually, I could choose whichever end I want to be the front or the back right now. This could be pretty interesting. So I think I'm actually going to make mine a little bit different than you might be expecting. And I'm going to put the mouth at this end. So I'm going to think about some of the mouths that we saw before. Some kind of narrower mouths. We saw a big beak. Some fish have kind of wider mouths and they suck in their food. So you can add any kind of mouth that you want for your fish. I'm going to give it, not sure what this is going to look like exactly. So sticks out just a little bit, so maybe that fish can eat something that's in small spaces. It can put its mouth into small spaces. And I think I want to give it a forked tail, like we saw on the goatfish. So that's my outline, and it looks pretty crazy, and that's okay, and yours might too, or yours might actually look familiar like one of the fish that we learned about. Some other things that we can add on are the eyes. So think about, we saw some different placement of the eyes on the fish that we were watching today. So I'm going to put it really close to the front and by the mouth. And now we need some fins. So think about all the different kinds of fins that you saw today. I'm going to give my fish, I think, a big dorsal fin and a big anal fin, kind of like the triggerfish. And I'm also going to give it a little pectoral fin. So you can make yours however you want, and you can get as creative as you want. I'm going to continue adding some little features here. And then of course, color is the funnest part, right? We get to decide, do we want to make ours bright and colorful? Do we want to make it camouflage? Do we want to add a false eye spot and camouflage the eye? All kinds of things you can do. So go ahead and keep going with your fish. I'm going to start to wrap up for the day with you, but I would love to see what you come up with. If you're really excited about the fish that you create, if you have a story that goes with it, excuse me, please feel free to share it with me, with our education team. You can email pictures to education@pacificwhale.org. And if you have any questions, anything that I didn't get to today, or if you're not watching live and you have a question, you can email education@pacificwhale.org. So I hope you enjoyed your time in our live virtual classroom this morning. I hope you learned a little something and had some fun. And again, we've barely scratched the surface, so there's lots of room to explore any of these topics further, to learn more about fish and coral reefs. The possibilities are endless. So please continue to learn. Thank you so much again for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon in another virtual educational opportunity. Until then, stay safe and healthy, and aloha.